Hey there guys, Portal Master here, and I am back today with another brief history of Toys to Life video. This is the third part of my Lightseekers little sub-series that I've done within this big main series. And today we're going to be talking about the Lightseekers Kickstarter and the fishy stuff that went on with it. Now, I have to be careful what I say in this video because I do not want to get in trouble for spreading rumors, lies, slandering a company or an individual or anything like that, and that's not the purpose of this video. But what I do want to say is I want to raise a few concerns and just a few little questions I have about the Lightseekers Kickstarter. So let's try to get into this. For those of you that don't know what Kickstarter is, it is a crowdfunding platform, and a crowdfunding platform is a place where an inventor or a small company can basically post a product or a game or something like that and try to raise money for it. Usually in reward for raising money, like they'll have people donate money and they will reward those backers somehow. For Lightseekers, they basically would have them back small amounts of money or large amounts of money and reward them with various amounts of Lightseekers merchandise. When I backed $50, and that got me an entire starter pack at a discounted rate from what it would be later on. It's kind of like a discounted pre-order, but not all Kickstarters do it like that, but that is usually how a lot of them work. Generally, the idea is that a large number of people will come together to pledge small amounts to collectively send someone over a hurdle and fund them that way. And to an extent, that is what Lightseekers did, but there are a few things that are weird about their Kickstarter that I'm going to be showing you. So I want to take you over to another Kickstarter project, and it's called Iron Harvest. Iron Harvest was a PC game, a real-time strategy game that was also placed on Kickstarter. It was wildly successful. It had about 16,000 backers, which is 10 times what Lightseekers had, and it was able to raise almost $1.3 million of crowdfunding money, which is a pretty successful Kickstarter for sure. I would say that's a very successful Kickstarter. Iron Harvest had pledge levels ranging from $10 to $2,000, meaning you could back anywhere in there and get any type of array of rewards. A lot of their rewards tiers clustered around the $40, $60, $80, but they did have a lot of pledge levels going up to $800, and then the $2,000 pledge level was just kind of an extra thing where people really wanted to donate an extra little bit and get just a premium little reward, they could do that. But most people didn't back at that level. So if we look at the number of people that kickstarted this, again, I said it was 16,000, and I said they raised $1.3 million, approximately roughly. So for pledges that were less than $300, 92.5% of their funding came from that. Only 7.5% of the $1.3 million that was raised came from pledges above $300. So basically what I'm saying is the majority of the money came from the majority of the people. There are a few high rollers that donated a little bit extra, $2,000 or something like that, but there weren't a lot of them. Most of the money came from a lot of small donations. This is not what happened with Lightseekers. Now, I can't say that what happened with Iron Harvest is the expected amount because I don't know that for sure, but for certain, this is what I would think an average Kickstarter would look like, and from the other Kickstarters that I looked at, this is what the average Kickstarter does tend to perform as. You have a lot of people donating smaller amounts to collectively send a Kickstarter over its funding goal, and that isn't what happened with Lightseekers, as I keep saying. Lightseekers had a funding goal of $200,000 and managed to raise $225,000. Lightseekers had pledge levels ranging from $1 to $10,000. Yes, you heard that right. $10,000 was the highest pledge level. Again, there were ranges all in between. You could pledge, $20, $30, $40, $50 for all types of different rewards, ranging from the cards to the figures to, premium early access, all kinds of things, beta figures, all the such, and so there are, of these tiers, up to $300 and $500 were the highest two pledges, $300 and $500. And not a lot of people backed at these levels, but a few people did. Those were the levels that provided you with premier beta access to the game. There were also levels for $1,000, $2,500, and $10,000. These levels would give you a premium engraved iPad with Lightseeker stuff on it. At $2,500, I think you got to meet with the developers and try to work on an area, get an area named after you, and then then at $10,000, you could actually fly out to Cambridge in the United Kingdom and take a ride in the official PlayFusion tank, which was owned by the CEO. He bought it, I think, when he was still at Jagex, actually. But anyway, those were the highest pledge levels. So I've got my phone out for this next portion because I want to be sure I get these numbers right. So Lightseekers had 1,635 backers. Of these backers, 20 of them account for almost half of the funding. You heard that right. 20 of the backers account for half of the funding. That's weird. So if we actually look at that more so, 149 of the backers represent $157,000, which is actually about 70% of the total funding that Lightseekers received. 150 people represent 70% of Lightseekers funding. That means that 10% of the backers are representing 70% of the money. That's not normal. It doesn't normally look like that. This represents an incredibly unrealistic amount of enthusiasm for Lightseekers. With only 1,600 backers, you're telling me that there were this many people willing to just drop $10,000 on Lightseekers? Who has that kind of money? Rich investors. That's what we're going to get to in a minute. Without these big, high-rolling people that donated thousands of dollars to the Lightseekers project, Lightseekers would have fallen short of their funding goal, and that's really, really important. I want to spend a few more minutes explaining why this is so strange, though, by showing you a few graphs that I grabbed off of a website that tracks various Kickstarters. Here's a chart that shows the funding of the Lightseekers project. You can see how much money Lightseekers made on a daily basis. And from this chart, nothing really looks that strange. You can slowly see an increasing amount of funds with a few areas where the graph seems to jump, but nothing super out of the ordinary. But let's look at this graph instead, that instead shows how much money was received from the Kickstarter each day. This looks very wrong. You can see that on certain days, there were a lot more funds received than on others. These are the days where those mega backers dropped their cash. This is 100% verifiable because you can superimpose that data set with this data set that shows the number of backers from each day. The days that show an increase in funding does not show an increase in the number of backers. These spikes are not due to backers coming out of the woodwork, it's due to mega donors. Now let me show you what every other Kickstarter that I've ever backed looks like. You can see that when a project launches, there's usually a large spike at the beginning and then a lull before a final upward push at the end. You can see this for almost every Kickstarter with some exceptions. Those exceptions are usually due to the Kickstarter flying under the radar until some big YouTube channel highlights them or they otherwise go viral. When that happens, though, the increase in funding is mirrored by an increase in backers. When the money would increase for Lightseekers, the backer number did not go up. Again, I just want to ask, who was donating $10,000 to this project? And again, I still think that this could have been investors. So this next part is a little bit where it enters like the legal danger zone. So I want to be very, very clear that what I am about to say, I am not accusing PlayFusion of doing. I am not saying that this is what they did, and I am not saying that I even think they would do something like this. I'm just saying that it's possible and that odds are it was nothing as nefarious as this. It could have just been random, very enthusiastic backers, but truth be told, we'll never know. I just want to tell you what I think it kind of looks like, at least a little bit, even if this isn't what it is. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. I suspect that high-valued investors are responsible for this. And why wouldn't they be? What better way than to make your company look good by having a wildly successful Kickstarter with tons of large donors? Because that's exactly what this Kickstarter looks like. By having these big investors drop money on PlayFusion's Kickstarter, it was able to make the company and the project look in a lot better shape than they may have actually been. Now, so far, nothing I've said seems like they could have done anything wrong, but I do want to propose a slightly more nefarious situation that likely didn't happen, but it certainly could have. And to do that, I have to introduce you to one of Kickstarter's policies, which is the all-or-nothing policy. See, Lightseekers had a funding goal of $200,000, and if they did not reach that funding goal, they would have to give all of their money back. So if people only pledged $100,000 of the $200,000, PlayFusion would have to give all that money back to the original backers. And this is a great policy, and I'll explain why. So imagine I'm trying to raise money to take a crew out on a boat to sea, and I need money to build a boat. Say it costs me, $100,000 to build that boat. Otherwise, it won't be safe or it won't be big enough. And these people only want to go on this ocean cruise if it's with 100 other people because they're very social people. So let's say that I only get funded $50,000 to build a $100,000 boat. I can either do one of two things. I can downsize the boat to a smaller one that can only take 50 people, but that's unfortunate because 100 people want to go on this cruise. But alternatively, I could build an unsafe boat that is big enough to support 100 people, but it isn't exactly what they were promised. See, that's the thing. The boat was going to cost me $100,000. I didn't raise enough money to build that boat. I have to give all the money back to the original investors. That's kind of the idea behind Kickstarter's all or nothing policy, and honestly, it's a really, really good policy. I am not saying that it happened, but I am saying it is certainly possible that these people that backed these large amounts of money could have been from the company itself. I am suggesting that perhaps it was employees. It probably was not, but we have no way of knowing. But it is weird, at least. It could have been employees of the company. It could have been big-time investors dropping their money into this instead of privately donating it otherwise. For instance, let's say that PlayFusion planned to get $200,000 from their Kickstarter, and they planned to get another $100,000 from private investors. Instead, they had those private investors drop their money into the Kickstarter instead of donating over on the side. So that means that all the money that came through Kickstarter, they would have gotten anyway. So when it's all said and done, instead of $200,000 from the Kickstarter and $100,000 from private investors, they only got the $200,000 from the Kickstarter. Perhaps that is what happened. It probably isn't, but it certainly is possible, and I need to throw it out there. That's honestly it. But when I looked at this Kickstarter years ago, I thought something was weird with this Kickstarter. I thought, man, there's some really passionate people about this project. I wouldn't suspect that there'd be that many people donating this much money to this project. And the thing is, I knew there were a few super fans of this project. I saw them on YouTube. I can't really remember who they were, but I definitely remember seeing them on the forums. There were people very, very, very dedicated to this game. But ultimately, there weren't really that many of them. And it seems like if you backed $10,000 to a game like this, you would probably be really passionate about it. You'd probably be a content creator or something like that. And ultimately, I just don't understand who would have backed this much money for Lightseekers. It's a weird situation. I have no way of proving anything I just said, and I don't even necessarily think that it happened, but I definitely think that something weird did happen, and either this happened or just a few random fluke investors or people who were very interested in Lightseekers dropped their money into this project. Very weird. Tell me what you think about it down in the comments. I don't really have much more I can say about this, but I think that I've summed up all my thoughts about Lightseekers. You know, the first video talking about why I think it was cool and sort of introducing it. The second video talking about why it was such a bad idea. And this third video really questioning what their crowdfunding was. There's a few things that are suspicious about it, and I thought you guys might want to hear about them. But that really is all I have for you guys. Please tell me down in the comments what you thought about this series. I hope you've enjoyed. I felt the need to break this into 3 parts, so I really do hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Portal Master. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys soon for a brief history of Toys to Life on Starlink. I'll see you guys then. Thanks again for watching. I just wanted to take some time to thank my generous patrons on Patreon, including Haley, Adrian, WOSA, True Blue Dogemon, and AngryTedC.